recording and share my screen. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to May's mini PD session. Gonna see if I can. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing end of the year cleanup. By any means, this is probably not rocket science, but I hope it's maybe just a few things that can help you ensure that you can kind of wrap up everything for the end of the year and make sure that you are ready to go for next year. So just a few things. I'm Katie Maddox. I am the Instructional Technology Coordinator for Chilton County Schools. I'm a certified Google trainer, which is one of the reasons why most of my mini PD sessions focus on Google tools. I also have several other ed tech certifications, and my contact information is listed on there. This is my 10th year as an educator and with Chilton County Schools. So been doing this for a decade and very thankful that I am now in this role that I've been in for almost 9 months here at our central office to support with technology. One of the resources that I like to share is my instructional resources page. It's linked right here in this box, but I'm just going to click on it over here for just a second. So every month for our mini PD, I do a feature for that. There's some information about certifications that teachers can check into to get additional ed tech training for instructional technology. And then I have our Google Bootcamp information sessions opened, getting tongue-tied this afternoon. I always record our trainings and post the information on our past trainings. And then with resources, I have several things for the DLCS standards, Google resources, other links. And then I'm working on building some training for the programs that we use, our core programs that we use here at the district level. That's something that's going to be utilized in the fall for all of our new hires. So that's still kind of under construction. I do post our monthly newsletters every month. I kind of house them on the side if you need to go back and find those. So I hope that you can visit my site and find something that may interest you. In the chat, I dropped a link for you to make your own copy of this kind of outline for today's mini PD if you want to take some notes or things like that on there. But we will go ahead and get into it. Like I said earlier, it's maybe things that you already know. If so, then you are great and on top of your game. But it's just a couple of things that would be great to go through just to have a process to make sure that everything is going to operate and jump up running smoothly for next year. So the first is going to be our Google Classroom. Most classroom teachers within our district utilize Google Classroom as their learning management system. So one of the things that I have seen in the past as an educator, I was the technology specialist teacher at my former school, is that when students would go into their Google Drive, they would still have lots of work where they had worked on items for teachers in Google Classroom, but they couldn't access it because they had turned in that work in the Google Classroom. This is the equivalent of a child taking a spelling test on paper and bringing it to the teacher and giving it to the teacher. Once they give it into the teacher, it is in the teacher's possession. So once students turn in work into Google Classroom, it is in that teacher's possession. They are the sole editor of that work. So even if it is something that is past due and it's been 6 months since they've worked on it, it really is a great idea to return all of that work to those students so that they can have their editing rights back. You know, they may want to utilize some information from a paper or copy some information off a slide that they did in middle school and use it for a project in high school. And it's just a little frustrating if they go through there. And then you also get those emails where so-and-so is requesting editing access. So if you just return all of your work, that will help prevent those issues. Just because we do step 2 and we archive our classes, it does not mean that it automatically returns all their work that's still hanging out in there. So I highly recommend doing that. And that may be something you want to do a better job of doing throughout the year. Next year is returning all that work. The second is to archive our classes. We are still a little unsure of, Clever auto generates or PowerSchool auto generates our Google Classrooms if you choose to use those per course. I am a little bit unsure, but I do not believe it automatically archives them. As long as you have a class still kind of on your little tile, your home screen like this, If there is still a class on your home screen, then students can still go into that class and get work. Now, that might not be a bad thing. You know, let's say the same teacher at the school teaches Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. You may want to keep resources in there for Algebra 1 that they can utilize for Algebra 2, but just know that those students in there will still continue to have access to that class until you archive it. So that's kind of a personal preference if you choose to do that. But if you're not going to be using the class anymore, I would just clean up your dashboard and go ahead and archive it. The third thing that is listed on here is to copy Google Classrooms. Again, I know that we have Google Classrooms that are automatically generated for us, and some of you may use those because Little Sis manages your rosters as kids come in and out. They're automatically added, and that's fantastic. There may be special circumstances that you create your own classes for certain groups and things like that. If you make a copy of your Google Classroom, you are able to keep kind of like a shell of everything that's in there. It will not copy every assignment over, but things that you post, like such as material and things like that, it does give you a clean copy of those. And that can be done just by going to any of your classes, clicking on the 3 dots and making a copy. You can rename your class and things like that, and it will create just an exact copy. So some people also do this at the beginning of the year. They go ahead and set up Google Classrooms and put basic things in there like a syllabus and resource handouts and links and things like that. And they just go ahead and make a copy at the beginning of the year to then fill in assignments. So that can be an end of the year thing or beginning of the year thing. But it would be one of those work smarter, not harder tips and tricks that I try to throw in to make things a little bit easier for teachers. So I have done that with my Google boot camps. I have one for the Alpha cohort, one for the Bravo cohort, and I have not made one for Charlie yet. So I will just copy this template and go ahead and change the name and fill in what I need to. Just saves a little bit of time. The second thing is our Google Drive. Some teachers have lots of free time that last week of school. Some don't. I know some don't. So that would be a great time to go through our Google Drive and clean up some stuff. So I'm a files person, and I have no problem showing you all my Google Drive on here. So I create folders for everything. I keep very little things out in the open. So making some folders to put things in, even if your teachers just make a folder that says 22-23 and throws all the things in there that they use, that's still kind of cleaning up their Google Drive some. So making some files either by subject area or things like that are a great way to kind of clean up their Google Drive. Also, go ahead and make clean copies and get set up for next year. If you know that you're going to be using this syllabus or this handout or this test or this worksheet, I always recommend making a copy of that and putting the new date in the title, just so that you can make sure that you're keeping them year to year, that they're clean copies. And then finally, I like to customize my Google Drive with different color folders. For example, this one was my work for Montevallo, so I chose purple as the color, since that is Montevallo's color. And so you just right click on it and use the 3 dots and change color. And then you can also, whenever you rename things, you can put little emojis in the front of them to kind of help, give some customization. And then if you want anything to be at the front of your Google Drive, if you put a little asterisk or star in front of it, it will automatically bump it to the top of your list in your drive. So just some extra little organizational tips right there with your Google Drive. But end of the year, I know that they've been saving things left and right and making things left and right. It's a great time to kind of slow down, or even over the summer to work on it a little bit at a time. Backup and transfer. So we highly recommend that everybody back up their files before we leave. Some of those poor PCs that are hanging out at some of our schools, they are not guaranteed to work when we plug them back in August. So Google Drive, we have almost unlimited space, and you can upload multiple things and even entire folders. So if a teacher has folders of things in their My Documents on their computer, they can upload that entire folder with one click. I would suggest, at the very least, making a file in Google Drive that says computer files, desktop files, something like that, and uploading their things from there in Google Drive. And, you know, if they want to go back and organize it later, that's fine. They can search for things in Google Drive to find what they want. This includes flash drives, that you can make sure that you have those files in a safe place, so that if you lose a flash drive or it gets misplaced over the summer or things like that, because I know our furniture gets moved, that we can make sure we have those. For employees who are leaving the district, their Google account will be disabled June 1st. It's not deleted, it's just suspended, but they will no longer have access to their files in their Google Drive. Google Takeout is a program that Google uses to transfer files and data from your Google Drive to a personal Google Drive. So you just look that up, follow those steps, and you can kind of transfer all of your things in bulk from there. Just remember that per board policy, things that are created and owned by the Chilton County School District, you're not supposed to take with you, but things that you made individually are totally fine to take with you. So you may want to reference that. I mentioned that to some employees who may be moving to different places or things like that. If you are transferring within our district, your email will stay the same. You will still have access to all of your files and things like that. So don't worry about that. Okay, so moving a little bit away from Google, Lightspeed, if you're not aware of what that is, it is our filtering management program that we use to monitor our students and their internet usage. So Lightspeed classrooms do not archive. I do know that for sure, because I'm going to jump over here to mine really quickly. And this is our dashboard. Thankfully, it doesn't show any students online right now. Oh, well, that's a teacher. That would be why. That no students are currently online. But over here where it has your drop down menu for your classes, these are all classes that are older. These are old Google Classrooms that I have since archived. Just because we archive them in Google Classroom, it does not seem to transfer over to Lightspeed. So we simply go to manage, and then under the 3 dots, you can hide that class. It's really not archiving, it's just hiding it from your list so that you don't have so many in that drop-down list. You can actually still go and look at your hidden classes, which I have a lot of because I have gone through and hidden mine. So Lightspeed does not clean that up for you. That's something that you will have to clean up. Another thing I recommend doing is checking the settings that you used this year. If you did do any custom blocks or things like that, just jot yourself a note down of what you did, so that when you come back in August, that you already have a reference of that whenever your new classes get set up for you. These sync from Google Classroom. We did have some issues with some syncing at the beginning of the year. It doesn't really seem to have a preference over the little sys-generated classrooms versus custom generated classrooms. Both of them had problems. So we are still working with that with some Lightspeed technicians. So hopefully that'll be a little bit better for us next year. But I would just go in and see what those settings are so you can repeat that for next year. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is something new that y'all are kind of getting the first hand info for. We use we have a district account for Remind. Most of our schools use Remind as their main communication tool. Remind classes are automatically generated through Clever currently, which also means that if you were an elementary school teacher, you got a Remind class made for your homeroom roster, your math roster, your reading roster, science roster, and that's all the same kids. We are going to try to customize that with the direct sync from PowerSchool next year. So you will only have a homeroom class generated, elementary people. Secondary, we're going to kind of see what our preferences are on that before we make a decision for that. But I did want to remind everybody that if they do not go in and archive their Remind classes at the end of the year, parents will still be able to communicate with you over the summer. So if you are fine with that, then that's great. If you do not want that, then I would go in and archive those classes. We hope that next year our syncs will be a little bit more streamlined and we'll be able to get everybody in there correctly and a little bit more efficiently. So Remind is going to be a really great communication tool if you haven't been using it, and hopefully we'll be able to release a little bit more direction with that in the fall. like I said, today was a little bit straightforward. I wasn't overly prepared, but most of these things I knew a good bit about already. Leave this for attribution, and then we have all the material in the Google Doc. So if you are watching this recording and you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And I hope that you were able to learn some tips for cleanup, and we can get our next year started off smoothly.